Welcome to Blockchain Recorded, the podcast for the tech curious, where we talk about anything and everything related to the exponentially evolving crypto, blockchain, and Web 3.0 space. Our mission is simple: to share knowledge, facilitate discourse, and help evolve education in blockchain fundamentals, decentralization solutions, and relevant use cases for today's digital economy. We at Blockchain Recorded are not registered investment advisors and do not deal with financial or trading token elements, nor offer any licensed financial services. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only, while the opinions of all parties involved are their own. I'm your host, Nina Tserar, and now let's talk blockchain. Before we begin, this podcast is possible by our sponsor at Ambire. The Ambire wallet is one of the top products in crypto asset management. It is the first open source, non-custodial smart wallet that delivers exceptional user experience combined with solid security. With Ambire Wallet, users can easily navigate the world of Web3. It comes packed with features like built-in swaps, cross-chain bridges, integrated earning opportunities, and more. In addition, Ambire offers things like human-readable transaction parsing, eliminating ERC20 approvals and front-running protection. The smart wallet uses gas abstractions that allow for unique features like paying for gas with stable coins. Users can batch multiple transactions to save time and gas fees. The wallet also supports NFTs and allows you to connect to any dApp via Wallet Connect. You can use it with an email and password or add hardware wallets or hot wallets as signers to upgrade your security. And the best part, Ambire speaks human. The UI is friendly and informative, ensuring you understand what you're doing and eliminating risks for mistakes. Ambire Wallet users are currently eligible for continuous wallet token rewards. To learn more and get your Ambire account today, visit www.ambire.com. That is AMBIRE.com. Before I introduce our guest today, I have a couple of brief updates for our community. Going forward, first, we invite everyone to join us on Twitter Spaces, where we will pre-stream each episode the day before publishing it on all of our distribution channels. And second, we also have a new NFT program with Blockchain Recorded Community NFTs. These can be claimed from our webpage, blockchainrecorded.com. So visit our website, check it out, and follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube for new cool updates and even potential airdrops. And so now I'd like to introduce our guest today, Travis Cannell. Travis is the head of product for Orchid Labs, where he oversees the development and marketing for the company. Prior to joining Orchid, Travis spent 14 years as a user acquisition manager for Fortune 500 companies such as Intuit and Experian. While at Intuit, he oversaw the launch and development of QuickBooks Self-Employed, taking the product from its initial launch to becoming a core offering for the QuickBooks brand. Travis, welcome to Blockchain Recorded.
Hi, it's so great to be here, Nina. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. So I took a look at your LinkedIn page, and I saw that you studied computer science. And I just wanted to talk about your background first. And you established your career in marketing, namely growth and product marketing. How come you continued with marketing?
Yeah, I started in computer science, and I wanted to study that when I was younger, and I got a few kind of entry-level programming jobs, but never really enjoyed that kind of work. And so kind of early on in my career, I switched over a little bit into doing sales and marketing, and I didn't really like the doing complete sales and marketing, but what I found is with a computer science background kind of married with some sales experience and business experience, you can do a lot with growth marketing. You get that you need that computer science mindset and scientific background to really make sure when you're measuring growth marketing campaigns that you are, you're doing that correctly and you are evaluating the numbers, using real data techniques. So, I haven't done much programming since college, but I do have a fairly active GitHub where I do documentation for different projects that I'm interested in, and I do play around with a little bit of code, but nothing serious now.
Cool. You talk about growth and product. I actually don't even remember these terms back in college. For me, it was also over 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
Marketing, I did undergrad for business school, and I don't remember any of this stuff. It's just evolved so much since then.
Yeah. And product can mean different things when you're talking to different people, but it's,
Right.
yeah, it's interesting how things have evolved.
Right. So if I'm not mistaken, I've also listened to a few previous podcasts you've been on. You were introduced to crypto in 2013, or you started paying attention to it. To what extent were you involved prior to joining Orchid?
I was really just reading about it. Maybe like a lot of people my age, I watched this whole financial crisis unfold in 2007, 2008. And then I saw, essentially the Republicans and Democrats, George Bush and Barack Obama just coming together and like asking, how much money we need to send to the banks to bail them all out. And I was really dismayed, I think, like a lot of people with that, as someone who, kind of believed in markets. I would have liked to see a little bit more of, perhaps some companies going bankrupt. So you could see, when Enron went bankrupt, I think that's the only way you can really see how fraudulent a company is.
Right.
When you bail companies out, and you never really have to inspect their books or see if they had bad practices or what was going on. So kind of, a couple years after that, I remember reading this, of course, nothing happened. There were no arrests. We just created all this money, bailed the system out. And,
right.
And maybe there was some benefit. Of course, there's benefits to that, but there's a lot of negative stuff that brought on as well. And there's no way to really opt out of the system. There's no way to do anything about that. There was the sort of Occupy Wall Street protests, but those were fairly flawed and didn't really move the needle that much. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, and I was I read this Wired article about Bitcoin, and I think it was when, part of it was about the price. It went from $7 to $30, $35, and then back down to $7. It's one of the first kind of kind of crashes, quote unquote. It crashed down to $7. But, it's just, how can you not be completely enamored by this story? There's this kind of, person, and no one really knows who it is. And it created this thing and put this message in there about 2008 and 2009. Then made this, this type of money that has a finite supply and a known supply. And I think there's just a lot of things that were really interesting to me about that. So I talked that over with some of my friends, and so it just kind of got on our radar. We didn't really do much about it. I registered some bad Bitcoin domains, but that was about it, and then we just kind of like went on with our lives. But then, of course, it just kept on boomeranging back and back, right? So just every time then that the price would pop, people would start talking about it. And, I just had been reading about it and kind of knew about it. So it was just something that I kind of watched from the Santa Monica startup scene, but I also just had no way of getting into it. There was no Ethereum. There was no people really building. There was, from my perspective, it was just like, water cooler talk about the price. So, it wasn't until much later until Ethereum launched, and then there was a bunch of projects that I actually got approached by Orchid, and that's kind of how I got into the space.
And you joined Orchid, what was it, 2017, 2018?
I think it was the summer of 2018, if I remember correctly. So I had been with this startup called DocStock in Santa Monica, and I was with them for about a year, and then they got purchased by Intuit. And Intuit kind of kept the DocStock team on in whole for about a year, and then they closed the office and had to let go a lot of people. But they kept maybe 10 or 20% of the workforce. And I started going up to San Francisco a lot in the Bay Area, working out of and I got put on a very cool growth team, and it was kind of exciting work. So I stayed there for a while, working on this QuickBooks self-employed product that we, helped launch and then grow. So
2018. So you've been there for a solid 4 years. How do you
Like a long
see?
time.
Sorry, like
It
a
feels like a
decade.
long time. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
know. In crypto
no
talk,
year.
it's forever. Yeah. Yeah, I can empathize with that. How do you, I mean, 2018 and now, obviously a lot has happened just on the macro perspective as well. But how do you see that the crypto space has evolved for you, or how you've seen it apart from Orchid? We'll get into Orchid later. So for the over the past 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from one perspective, it still feels really early.
Hmm.
I think we're still building out scale. We're still trying to solve a lot of the kind of fundamental issues that I think Ethereum had with scaling and pricing of transactions and things like that. And, still on that kind of thread of things are early, is I think we're still looking for kind of real use cases where decentralization gives you advantages, that are greater than all of the difficult parts about, managing your own keys and, a decentralized system where you have to assume that a lot of the decentralized participants might be trying to screw you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an interesting kind of emergence of what's happening lately. I just can't believe over the last year, I feel like every week there's like a major hack.
Yeah.
And there are hacks in the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there was the entire, I just got back from DevCon, and some of my favorite sessions were on the L2 bridge that were hacked. And then also some of just kind of the major things that happened, of course, with Terra Luna and then Three Arrows Capital. I think though that combination, I forget who was talking about that in their session, but that's the type of combination of that really gets regulators' attention, is if you have this massive blow up and then it affects some of the financial firms in the space. So I think, so I guess just my broad perspective is that we're still building, we're still discovering those use cases. And, it's exciting. The Ethereum community in particular, when I was at DevCon last week, no one's really talking about price or trying to forecast price. Everyone's talking about what's working, what's not working, what are we building, how are we going to solve problems. The merge was talked about probably since I started in 2018, and it went off for such a major kind of effort. It went off really smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there's like you just said about the Terra collapse. I mean, there's bumps in the road, but like you said, quietly building in the bear market. I think for some of us who've been around, you kind of get a little, you kind of tune out of it because you know that the price is not the main focus. It's just really trying to fix the glitches and move towards adoption. So yeah, very cool. I want to just quickly, before we move on, I'm just sort of curious about your marketing role. We haven't actually had a guest with this extent of like marketing experience. In terms of your marketing role in Orchid now versus your roles in the traditional Web2 space, I did hear you comment in some of the previous discussions that you've had that you found it much more difficult. Is that still the case for you, like today?
Yeah. So, to give some more context around that, when I was working at Intuit, working on this kind of QuickBooks product, we had an app. When you opened the app, we were using a program called Kochava, right? So Kochava was taking your IP address. It was taking anything that you were clicking on, and specifically, right, it was also using your IP address or your ad ID, not really your IP address. I think I might be mistaken on exactly the technical specifics, but I think it was taking like this unique identifier for you that identifies that phone, and it's like it knows what sort of ads were being shown to that phone. It knows what ads were clicked on that phone. And so a lot of the games sort of doing these attribution models when you're spending large amounts of money to try to really understand what's happening, right? Especially in a big organization, you have different kind of marketing departments that are all trying to fight over why someone bought something. Like, oh no, they definitely saw my TV ad, and like it's untrackable, but I just know that they saw this billboard, right? And that's why. You know,
Right.
they saw the character that we made in the billboard, and that's why they clicked on something. And it's kind of like, well, we actually have a database here of views and clicks for each of these people, right? And so we can build out these models, and it's like, no, this person bought, because they saw these 4 ads, and we can tell which ads are effective, right? So it's of course it's good and it's bad. It's great because you can track everything, and it's bad because you can track everything, because then people can see the numbers. Right. And it's difficult. It's a real difficult thing, even when you have complete tracking. So, a lot of coming into Web3, and specifically Orchid, with our mission to connect everybody to the open internet, and a real privacy focus, we didn't want to have any tracking, no Google Analytics on the website, just nothing in the app. So that was a big challenge, and I think it's still really, it's still really difficult to do kind of the paid acquisition growth marketing for a company that doesn't have invasive tracking. It's almost like you need to go back to before there was that kind of tracking and do surveys, or, there's always kind of a little bit of stuff you can do, just seeing server logs and stuff like that. We even clean up our server logs when we look at them. We remove all the IP address information, and try to be very, very sensitive with any data that's being collected, even just like from a server that's serving. But you can kind of see, you can see a little bit. And then, of course, we have apps in the stores, and there's kind of some data that you get there, right, from Google or Apple, that comes with no tracking, no additional tracking code that's in the apps. But then, of course, in the open source community, if people are compiling the code themselves and running it, you just don't really know. So you have to kind of come with a different approach. And, Web3 is about building community and about trying to get people that are interested in your mission, and then getting them to help. So, with Orchid, it's really interesting because for these last 4 years, it's just been crazy to see what's happened, Hong Kong, we had like the, everything that happened in the Middle East many years ago, and like Egypt, of course, what's happening in Ukraine and Russia now, what happens in the certain regions of India, just around the world. Things start to get kind of hot. The first thing, one of the biggest kind of tools in the tool belt now is to turn off the internet or censor the internet or block the access to the open internet, so that kind of shut off the sources of information flowing in and out of the situation. And of course, what's happening in Iran right now, it's kind of a very classic example. It's hard to know, for sure, what's happening there, because they're so successful at sort of blocking that information.
Actually, speaking to that, actually was one of my questions. Reading Orchid's mission, which I quote, which I actually found from your website. It says, "We use Web 3.0 technology to offer users better digital privacy today, so we can realize the promise of the Web 1.0 and explore freely again." So you say that you wish for everyone to get connected to the open internet, and just what you mentioned, given the increasing geopolitical tensions and financial instability, which some were probably kind of predictable. It's sort of predictable, but unpredictable. And then maybe potentially even heavier restrictions on the crypto space, and like just blocking also blockchains. What could this mean for Orchid's evolution? Like in terms of, because this is part of your mission, and if you have all this stuff happening, does this have any impact on you guys?
Means we got a lot of work in front of us for many, many years. And it's not just going to be a VPN.
Right.
And, and then there's trade-offs, right? So, the more secure sometimes you make something, the more private, the more you want to do something that's better. There's trade-offs in terms of like speed.
Right.
You could have something that's really very, I don't know if secure is the right word, but, kind of private. Like you could do a lot to try to hide who you are and what website you're trying to connect to, but then it might get so slow that the website won't load, or you're going to get really annoyed. But yeah, I think that we just have, we got a lot of work to do to keep making things that can help people.
Yeah, so that's where like the trilemma gets real.
Yeah, and we've kind of, with Orchid, we've really hit that we try to nail kind of a really easy to use user experience, and I think we backed off of that a little bit. But I think ultimately we took a strategy to keep our team relatively small, and to our CTO Jay Freeman talked about this, but not. We don't really want to, or I guess Jay's not, he's our head of technology, but he really wants to highlight that, move fast and break things, which is a great thing in Web 2, leads to a lot of hacks and stuff in Web 3. You might want to actually hire some people to sit around and think about things and move a little slower. But yeah, so I think when I look at kind of the longer term outlook, I think that, connectivity and how firewalls work and what tools we have in the tool belt that we can create to help people. There's a lot to that. There's multiple parts, software, there's hardware, and then there's specific applications as well. So, I think with Orchid, we have the building blocks that we've created for our bandwidth marketplace. And, I think that's going to be applicable to other things. Yeah.
So, let's talk about the actual protocol and move on to the explanation of the VPN. I think it's inevitable. You do talk about it a lot. So as I understand, Orchid is not a VPN service company. You need to get that differentiated. Do not run servers, etc. Orchid is a decentralized system connecting providers to buyers. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, definitely. And so that's, sometimes when I start talking about Orchid, people come up and they're like, well, where are your VPN servers? If they're in the United States, you're under the Five Eyes jurisdiction and you need to tell me and like all this. I'm like, whoa, like we're not a VPN company. We're not running VPN servers. We don't even, when we launched Orchid, we kind of made a point to bring in professional providers from the get-go who would know how to run a very high-speed VPN service. And that was kind of how we started. So we never actually we run test servers and stuff ourselves, but on the production side, everything is not run by us. So, at its core, that's when we talk about Orchid as a bandwidth marketplace, because it's really like we're just facilitating buyers and sellers, essentially buying quote unquote bandwidth, which is VPN service. And so we kind of have this decentralized network of providers, and they stake OXT in our directory contract, which is on the Ethereum blockchain. And we have no plans on moving that. That's kind of our important contract. And then a user comes to that directory contract and they ask it for a provider, and kind of depending upon how much stake each provider gets, they have a better chance. That user has like a better chance of connecting to the largest stake, which is what we call stake weighted random selection.
Okay.
So kind of like when we, kind of zooming out this bandwidth marketplace, we're just trying to keep everyone incentivized, on the provider side to run good servers, and to, when they stake OXT, they're kind of buying into the ecosystem, and they want there's kind of an economic incentive for everything to be aligned. And then on the user side, they're going to most likely get better service. And then there's kind of another piece to it, which is our probabilistic payment piece. And that really is separate from, in a lot of ways, but it does grant like this power of being able to pay for very small things. So like the user, there's no like multi-year commitment, which is a very centralized thing, or even a
Right.
monthly commitment, or even a large commitment for multiple days or like multiple gigabytes.
So the subscription model.
Yeah, or any sort of model where you're like, okay, well, I'll pay you $5 and you're going to give me great service for the next month, right? And like you're kind of trusting that service is going to stay up, that they're not going to screw you and stuff. And of course, in the decentralized mindset has to be that there's a lot of people out there trying to screw you. So, from the user side, you kind of connect to this directory and you get a provider, and then you start sending it these really tiny payments. I think you're kind of essentially getting, I think, 80 kilobytes per off-chain payment. And then you establish your connection. And if it's fast enough and it's working, then you keep paying that provider. So it kind of makes a liquid marketplace by having these kind of really small payments. So,
and these are your nano payments, as you refer to them as, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the general architecture of our system. So you have the providers staking, and they're kind of, with their stakes, they're kind of competing against the other providers for the user deal flow that comes into the marketplace. And then the users are, every time they hit the connect button, they're hitting that directory and they're getting, assigned, getting kind of stated, assigned to a provider, and then they're getting service. And then they're sending, as they're getting service, they're sending these tiny payments. And then as soon as they turn the service off, they're not paying for it anymore. So it's a different kind of business model than typical SaaS, monthly subscription model.
The Blockchain Recorded podcast is a media partner with the Stronger Together Challenge Initiative. Our collaborative role extends to hosting topic-specific panels to facilitate discussion and perspectives within varying industries related to the Web3 space. Let us have a few words with Laurent Perello, the initiative founder. Laurent, what is the Stronger Together Challenge Initiative?
First, we have to mention that it's an ecosystem initiative. In other words, a voluntary movement encompassing leading partners and projects of the Tron and BitTorrent chain ecosystem.
What are the main goals of this initiative?
The main goal is to demonstrate the powerful together effect. As I used to say, together is much more than a word. It's magic. We aim to show to the whole crypto industry and beyond that the Web3 revolution is not about competition, but rather about cooperation. We are really supportive, welcoming, open-minded and inclusive. It's not a marketing speech. This initiative is also a way to confirm our long-term commitment, regardless of the bear or bull market situation, and our determination to keep on building every day, guided by a long-term vision and a humanistic philosophy.
Thanks, Laurent, for illustrating what Stronger Together stands for. Season 1 of the initiative successfully ended, while Season 2 is planned to start in December. Let me also mention that panels will be celebrated by NFT airdrops. Stay tuned for further updates. You alluded to the probabilistic aspect of it, which actually, I'll be honest with you, I was trying to figure it out on your homepage. And I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not a technical person, but in terms of the explanation, how that works and why, can you maybe just talk a little bit more about that, just in terms of, okay, I know nano payments are the central part of your solution stack, but how exactly does it work, or this probabilistic notion? That's the confusing part
I'd love
to me.
to chat more about that. I think, probability and statistics was maybe not everyone's favorite subject.
No, not mine.
And so we're kind of using the law of large numbers to send value, but essentially kind of how it works. And so first of all, just caveat by saying that this is a building block that we're using, but this is kind of a separate piece that we are now promoting as a layer 2, layer 3. And we really think that this could be useful for a lot of applications where maybe a machine talking to another machine needs to send a really small payment. And then I'll further just say, kind of narrative wise, I think our original white paper was written in 2016 or 2017. We call them stochastic payments. LivePeer came out and took that idea. So they use probabilistic payments inside their system to pay their providers. I've seen Althena Networks, which is like a wireless mesh type project. They use probabilistic payments. So there's a few projects out there that I think have taken our idea and used it. We're trying to make our probabilistic system a little bit more user friendly and easier for developers to come in and maybe use on their projects. So that's kind of been it's going to be a big focus over the next couple of quarters for Orchid. And so that's kind of like a broad overview of what we're trying to do with it. Now, how it works, the blockchain kind of explanation is that it's like a layer 2 or layer 3 where you have to take some money and you kind of put it into our layer, right? So you bridge it over, or you make an account, as we call it. And that account is essentially we call it like a lottery pot is one way to think of it. And then you can issue lottery tickets from that lottery pot, if that makes sense. And the lottery tickets are like a scratch lottery ticket. And most of them are losers, but then a winner, triggers like an on-chain transaction. Okay. And the general idea is that rather than paying somebody, $1 100 times, you give them a 1 out of 100 chance of winning $100, right? Or really just work the probabilities out so that they work. Like rather than sending somebody $1, you send them the probability, 1 out of 100 probability of winning $100. And that way, if you send 100 payments, you're only going to be charged 1 on-chain transaction fee. Whereas if you send $1 100 times, you're going to be charged 100 transaction fees. It allows you to take any blockchain. So we've now have this running on 9 blockchains. And one of the blockchains we're running on is Optimism, which is already really cheap. And so we're making even, many orders of magnitude even cheaper to send these off-chain transactions. And it's very customizable as to the value, because you could make a lottery ticket win 50% of the time or, 0.001% of the time, just depending upon how much value you want to transfer. Because like a scratch lottery ticket, you go to the store, you buy a scratch lottery ticket. The two probably important things about that is how much money are you going to win and how likely are you to win it? And so with our nano payment system, the person sending the payment sets those parameters, and then the person accepting the payment, checks those parameters and checks that you still have money, in your lottery pot on chain, so that if they get a winning ticket, they get the money. And then there's some other little caveats, and we require a deposit on the network that prevents a kind of double spending issue that can arise depending on when the provider cashes winning lottery tickets. But in general, we're kind of think of the scheme as a probabilistic roll-up. So you're kind of using probability to roll up these transactions so that you can have a lot of transactions off chain, but then it rolls up to like one time when there's a winning ticket. That's kind of when things are settled. And then the other cool thing about it is that's a one-to-many payment channel. So when you make a lottery ticket as a user, any provider will accept that. There's no overhead in like some payment channels. There's overhead of like me, Travis, I'm going to open up a payment channel with you, right? And then we can trade, and then we need to, undo that kind of when we're done trading and settle up. This is kind of a one-to-many payment channel where I can send you a ticket, I can send somebody else a ticket, any provider on our network, can accept a lottery ticket. Yeah. So, but we've kind of been working on our DApp to make it a little bit more universal for this, so that people can come and like make an Orchid account on Optimism or Phantom or Binance Smart Chain or Polygon or even Gnosis. I think there's 9 of them now that we're on, all the EVM compatible chains.
Right. I was just going to ask you. Yeah, you have or Avalanche.
Yeah, Avalanche. And then somebody could potentially, a developer could potentially, use that for really tiny payments, either in, for bandwidth like we're doing, or compute or storage or something, or even like API requests, or other types of tiny resources that a user comes and wants to buy something really small, but you have to shoehorn them into maybe a monthly fee or some other type of way to pay them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just a little backtrack, because you mentioned now your multi-chain strategy. How did you? I mean, I don't know if you can talk to this, or if this is more of a developer question, but how did you approach the multi-chain strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk about from where my perspective.
Sure.
Basically, we launched Orchid, and right away, right on Ethereum, and then almost immediately the gas price is like 10x and then 100x, and like something that little transactions on Ethereum that used to cost 50 cents suddenly started costing $5 or $50.
Right.
And for a project that was, really trying to get users that might not know much about the blockchain, and in a hyper competitive situation where you can buy, for $50, you could probably get a year worth of VPN service from a major provider. Spending that much on just gas, we were like, oh my God. So
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew we had to do something. So we started with XDAI, before it was Genesis, and we kind of moved a lot of stuff onto there and basically did the analysis that most of the value, for Orchid is all in the provider staking, and the fact that users were making accounts in OXT, which they still can, and paying for service in OXT on the Ethereum network, like that wasn't a major sort of value driver. So, after we did that kind of analysis, we decided, okay, well, the users could actually pay the providers in different currencies on different chains. And the core thing is that the providers are still going to be staking OXT on Ethereum. By opening up the number of and types of payments that were accepted by providers, it's kind of like letting them take Visa or MasterCard, et cetera. In particular, when Ethereum got so expensive, so that, Gnosis has been very cheap. And then, of course, Avalanche was cheap, maybe getting a little bit more expensive. Optimism is very cheap. Pretty excited about some of these ZK EVM that are coming out. I think they will be cheap and interesting. So we're just Orchid was really able to launch on all the chains that were EVM compatible, and supported all the right Geth calls for the Ethereum client. That's another thing that we kind of learned. Actually during the process, Jay found a bug on Optimism and got a $2 million bounty.
Oh no! Wow.
Because it was like it was a one of those bridge problems that would have allowed you to kind of mint an unlimited amount of Ethereum on the Optimism network, and he did a nice write up on his blog about that.
Oh, wow.
But that was while he was, launching Orchid on the Optimism chain.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. So meaning you're talking about, obviously Orchid is an EVM protocol. Did you guys maybe think about other frameworks, like Cosmos or Substrate, or I don't know if you're familiar with those?
Yeah, we looked at a few of those, but it's, some of that stuff can be distracting. I think it starts to get kind of exciting. It's like, oh, well, this, you get these benefits, but then there's trade-offs like anything. And, we did look at a few of those. I don't have any like specific thoughts on. We wanted to keep our core contracts on Ethereum. Sort of believers in Ethereum, and it's obviously one of the largest chains. And think with how the merge has been handled and everything, everything is still looking good there. And by allowing the payment to happen, kind of making our nano payment system more flexible so that it runs on any chain. That's another thing that other projects could use. It's not, our nano payment system is not stuck on Ethereum because we launched all the smart contracts and all the different chains. So it's usable by, you can pay, Matic on Polygon chain for, with off-chain tiny payments using our kind of system.
Sure.
But we wanted to keep our core contracts, like our staking kind of directory contract and some of the other contracts associated with the service providers, like on Ethereum.
Yeah, you just mentioned a little bit of a keyword there, like on-chain, off-chain. Just for our listeners, and maybe just to take it a step back, obviously we're talking about smart contracts on Ethereum. It would be good to understand sort of how the main tech parts are glued together. So what's on-chain, what's off-chain, and then where the Orchid network comes to play, and how does your L2 integrate? So just sort of like maybe in a nutshell way of understanding all of this together.
Yeah. So let's see. So basically, when you're running the VPN app, a VPN server is essentially a server you connect to and you run all your web requests through it. Actually, really any internet connectivity requests go through your VPN. So, and then the benefit there is that any website you connect to, it doesn't know your home IP address. It's going to know the IP address of the VPN server. So the user kind of opens the Orchid app, and you need to connect a valid Orchid account. So that's where the L2 comes in. So that you like the user's responsibility is to either use our DApp to fund their own Orchid account. We also have a way you can buy an Orchid account on the Gnosis chain, within the app.
Okay.
And it only costs $1 to get started. It's pretty easy to try out. And then once you have a valid account, then you have this kind of lottery pot. So that's an Orchid account is like a pile of money, and then you're issuing these lottery tickets against it. And most of the lottery tickets are off chain, meaning that they're losers, but then the winners go on chain, and then value is transferred from the user's lottery pot to the provider's wallet, if that kind of makes sense, of the payment layer. And then when the user goes and they connect to a provider, that's kind of where the stake-weighted random selection comes in and the directory contract. So the user looks on the Ethereum chain and looks at when they ask for a VPN connection, then the providers all stake OXT, and then the providers list their gateway. And so, basically there's kind of a random selection event that happens that's stake weighted depending on the staking, how big the stake is. So if there's a big provider that has 1/3 of the total stake, there's a 33% chance that you're going to connect to that provider, if that kind of makes sense. And then once you at a provider, you kind of go through a connection dance and then establish VPN service with that provider and start sending them payments, and they start forwarding your packets, and you get that VPN benefit. And I'll say it's kind of nice, when you have a VPN company and you connect to the same VPN all the time, you're going to use the same IP address. Like with Orchid, you're kind of getting there's this randomized event that happens. So you're kind of randomly connecting to these different VPN servers, and your IP address is kind of constantly shifting. And then also Orchid has this really cool feature where you can actually string multiple VPNs together. And I could talk a little bit about that, but I just want to get back to kind of the core architecture of Orchid and how we run this VPN network and this bandwidth marketplace. And
yeah, that'd be great. Sure.
That's kind of how it works. So you have, if a provider wants to come and run our Orchid server, they can get the code, they start running the server, and then they have to stake OXT in the directory contract, kind of get set up, and then they can start, they'll start getting connection requests. There's some other little detail in there that we have a kind of a curator system, which is sort of like a blacklist. So if providers, if there's a provider that we know is not doing a good job, we'll kind of kick them out of our curator, which we haven't had to do yet. And but we do have like a kind of a curation system. And of course, users can run their own curator or pick a different curator if they want. But Orchid kind of runs an official curator of the nodes. That basically we don't, if there's any nodes that we say are bad, we'd put them in that sort of curator. And so that's a little bit of a filter as well when you're connecting to these providers. Yeah, just that's kind of the general part of it. So you have a decentralized network of providers. They come in, they stake OXT, they get connection requests. They're kind of, the providers are kind of, we sometimes throw around this term adverse staking, but they're kind of advertising with their stake to get deal flow. And that's kind of how the incentives of the marketplace are set up on the provider side. And then the users come in and, they just want to get connected to a provider that has, good service and will work for their use case. And so they connect and, then they start getting that VPN benefit. Their IP address will change to the provider's IP address. And, if they're in a country that's behind a crazy firewall, they'll get out of that firewall and they'll get access to the open internet.
Question there in terms of, so Orchid's mobile app, which actually you can download it in the Apple Store and also on Android, right? I mean, it's downloadable via just any regular phone. It also acts as a wallet. So where users actually hold their tokens needed for service payment. Is that, am I getting that right? It's actually a wallet?
Yeah, well, it's not really like, so it's like, if you imagine a layer 2, you kind of, Orchid's, I guess, a little bit different, but like the first thing to think about is layer 2 does use a wallet, but then you move funds on from one chain to another. And, Orchid kind of has that. So you take some money and you put it in your account, and that's essentially like sitting in a contract on that chain, and it's sort of, you can then take your money back out again. So whether it's custodial or non-custodial, it really just depends on the wallet that you connect to move money into and out of your Orchid account. So at the base level, it's like, it's up to you. Like you could use your whatever wallet you want, you connect it to our DApp, you move money into your Orchid account, and then to move money out of that Orchid account, you need to connect to that wallet. Right. Okay. So much like how, it works, just kind of moving money onto the Polygon chain, from Ethereum to the Polygon chain or into Avalanche or. Okay. Yeah, you actually, that was good. You explained a lot of the questions that I had in terms of the architecture. Just in terms of privacy, we talk about centralized VPNs, decentralized VPNs. Obviously, you guys are decentralized, not really a service. Just from a layperson's perspective, I don't know if this question would make sense, but how secure is your VPN really? I mean, it has to be secure. Yeah, we have kind of a more technical, in-depth explanation in our facts that people that are really into that, should go read there. Okay. What I'll say is when you talk about privacy, the first question is privacy from who? Like if you're looking for complete anonymity from everyone, that's really tough, obviously, too, when you're talking about major world powers and their associated kind of apparatuses, and from what we know of like the revelations from Snowden about what they're doing and how they're looking at internet traffic. So privacy from that, obviously, is like, if that's what you want to be private from, that's going to be incredibly challenging. But, or on the other end, like, what if you just want, you're connecting to a coffee shop's Wi-Fi and you want to be private from that coffee shop owner? Yes. Right. Who can might be able to see, is in in security, we call it an advantaged position. But when you connect to somebody's Wi-Fi, they're in an advantaged position. They can see what types of requests you're making. They can learn a little bit about your device. And, there's certain cases where they could intercept, there's different hijacks attacks and different things that they could try to do. So if you want to be private from that, kind of scenario, VPN works really well by encrypting your traffic and sending it somewhere else. So that internet service provider, whether it's a coffee shop or your cell phone provider or, a Cox cable, or, if you're in a different country, typically that ISP might be run by the government of that country and firewalled and stuff like that. But anyways, they won't be able to see exactly what you're doing, and so you're getting some privacy from that ISP. Okay. So, and then there's one other thing I'll touch on the security aspect, and I talked about this a little bit, but when you go multi-chain, so there's kind of the magic number, which is 3 VPN nodes, and Tor, which is a project that we appreciate a lot at Orchid, and Tor has it sends your traffic through 3 VPN hops. The reason is because if you imagine the VPN itself is an advantaged position. If you connect to one VPN node, it can see your IP address and it can see the website you're connecting to, and it could log that. And so, of course, all these VPNs say, well, we don't log, right? But who knows?
But they do.
And then, it's not, seemingly the best ones say like, well, no, look, we went to court and we told the court that we don't log, and, But ultimately, another way to go there is to actually send your traffic through 3 VPN nodes. And that way, any one VPN node or any one node on this network doesn't have a whole picture, right? So the first node is going to know who you are, but then they don't know what website you're connecting to. They're just like, oh, I'm just kind of forwarding packets onto this other VPN server. And then there's a VPN server in the middle that's like, well, I know who the first node is and the last node, but I don't know who the user is, and I don't know what the website is. And then the last node just knows the website really that it's connecting to. And so it's a way of, keeping the information sort of compartmentalized. That's how Tor's been really successful, and that's so Orchid allows you to make multi-hop routes, and you can make a 3-hop route. And each time you connect to a 3-hop route on Orchid, you're kind of going through this random selection process, which is interesting. So, yeah. And then, for the specific security guarantees, you can read about that on, on our FAQ. We have a little bit more technical detail there.
Yeah, that was good. One of my next questions was about the multiple hopping route feature and why it's important. So that was great. Well, cool. We talked about a lot. So we talked about the app and the DApp and nano payments and sort of the core components of the Orchid network. Just maybe taking it a step back from all the technicals. I didn't ask this yet, but in terms of Orchid's employee structure, just totally taking a different macro dive. How big are you guys now? Like, what's your team size? Yeah,
so we are kind of kept it fairly small. I want to say somewhere in the probably 20 employee range. We have a lot of contractors and different, people that we work with on the marketing side, development side. Yeah, so kind of like mid-20s.
Cool. What's your structure like? I mean, we were talking about centralized versus decentralized. Are you guys decentralized?
Well, yeah, I mean, we used to have an office in San Francisco, but then after kind of COVID and fires and stuff, we kind of closed that down. Oh, the fires. Oh, wow. Also that? Yeah. Kind of all hit at the same time. Oh, no. Well, cool. I'm just sort of thinking through in terms of, I think we've covered a lot in terms of the architecture. Can you let us in maybe on sort of the roadmap for Orchid or maybe visions for next year? Can you share with us anything? Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're working on now of talking about our nano payments and getting that in front of some developers and some other use cases. Like I said, there's other projects that have taken the idea and implemented it themselves. Right. We want to see if there's anyone out there that wants to actually kind of use it, use our version of it, kind of off the shelf, if you will. And that's interesting to us. And then we're just working on other decentralized pieces besides just bandwidth, that is kind of aligned with our mission. So, and I don't have a whole lot more to say other than that. But I think over the next 6 months, we'll be, doing a fair push on our sort of nano payment system and getting that out there a little bit more. Very cool. Well, Travis, is there anything to add that I haven't asked you
that you would like our listeners to know or have like some takeaways?
No, I think it's been a really good discussion. Hopefully it's been enlightening to your listeners about how kind of Orchid works and the VPN. I'd encourage people, if you're in the blockchain space, download the VPN. Go to the Apple Store, go to the Android Store, search for Orchid VPN. Download it, buy an account for $1. Use it. Tell us what you think. And it's pretty quick and easy to get started, and it's amazing that that's sort of like a real blockchain product. So I'd kind of leave it with that. And then also, if anyone's interested, any developers out there that are interested in using our nano payment system, or if anything when we were talking about sort of lottery tickets or probabilistic payments, if that's interesting, love to chat with them. So, I'm on Twitter at Travis Cannell. And we're at Orchid Protocol. So those are probably the easiest places to get a hold of us.
Awesome. Well, Travis, thanks so much. I really enjoyed having this talk, as I think you have not only a great but super relevant product for today's privacy solution need. I think it's important to have these conversations and also dive in maybe more technically, just like how you did today. So I'm super curious to see how you'll evolve, and best of luck with that.
Thanks so much, Nina. It's been a huge pleasure to be on here, and thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks again to our guest, as well as thank you everyone for listening. A big thanks goes to CoinMarket League for co-sponsoring this episode. Thank you also to the Barian Music team for providing their music. You can check out their latest album on barianmusic.com. You can find all supporting information on our website, blockchainrecorded.com, and listen to us on Google, Apple, and Amazon podcasts, as well as Spotify, Radio Public, and Stitcher. Stay healthy and tuned for our next episode.